Hey, everybody, welcome back to Pure Michigan Sports. Whether you're counting with us or you started way back with us and Luke, this is either episode 2 or episode 10. I like us hitting double digits here with a very special guest, Chris Castellani. He's going to come on in just a little bit. Until then, it's Christian Peck-Dimit. It's Alex Deimel. We're talking Michigan sports. We're talking the half dozen. We're going to look at the playoff picture in the NBA, in the NHL, and of course, we've got, we added it last week, a new segment on this day in Michigan sports history, and we've got one that just made me laugh so hard.
I like double take. I thought you photoshopped it when
It
you sent
seems
it to
fake,
me
right?
like a couple hours ago. I was like, "There's no way like
Yeah.
this is what I'm reading right now." It made no fucking sense. But we'll
So
get
we've got
into it.
some, yeah,
We'll
a
get into
great
it.
throwback. It's going to be gorgeous. So stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for Chris. And until then, we're just going to get kicked right into it with segment number 1, which is the half dozen. So here in Michigan, we've got, we've got more than that, but mainly 6 teams, a half dozen, the 4 main: Tigers, Lions, Pistons, Red Wings, and then Michigan State. We're Hillsdale grads, so we've got some. We'll throw, when there's relevant news, some non D1 stuff in there, some Ferris, some Hillsdale, some maybe Central goes on a run or something. We'll mention all the Michigan sports that are relevant, but for the time being, we'll get right into it with the Lions as number 1 of our half dozen. And really, there's not a ton of breaking news. OTAs are going on. The biggest thing is Tyrion Arnold has a TikTok, and it is as ridiculous as you might think it is, but the kid
Okay,
looks
this
like he's having fun, if nothing
this
else.
is news to me. I'm not really on TikTok very much. I guess
Good.
yeah. Is this? Are we talking like Juju type
No, no,
TikTok
no, no,
stuff
no.
or?
It's just him doing random crap. He's got 380,000 followers on TikTok. This isn't really
Holy
news, but
shit!
it's just him like in the
Oh,
locker
okay.
room
Just
and
being
post
goofy.
stuff.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
hey, if he's
It's
having
just fun
funny,
stuff.
I can get down with that energy. Like, that's
As long as he's not pulling, we'll talk about this closer to the actual season. Uh, CJ with the ski mask kind of pissed me off from day one. I'm not gonna lie. So as long as he's not
really.
doing that,
I think
yeah,
you're the first person to ever say that.
maybe. I just felt like it was the wrong energy to bring to the team, and I feel like we've never been the type of team that like
I
gets
mean, but
talking too
look
early.
where it
You know what
got
I
us.
mean?
Look where it got us.
That's not.
That's the
There's
farthest where
so
we've
much
gone.
else that got us there.
All right, yeah, that's fair. That's
Plus, I
fair.
don't want to perpetuate the like Detroit is a shithole. We're gonna wear shiesties and go rob people thing. Uh,
Fair enough.
no, I just feel. I mean, he's gone now, so it doesn't really matter
Yeah.
anyway. But that's
Hey,
sort
we're
of
not
it
on
for
Hard Knocks.
Lions news.
Did you see that
We're
release
not on
today?
Hard Knocks.
They're doing like 3 different things of Hard Knocks, and like the main
No,
training camp one, I guess, is I think it's the Bears, and the Giants have like some
probably should
free
be
agency one. I don't know. Seems like they're grasping at
the
straws, but I
Giants.
guess we'll
The
see.
Giants offseason one should be
I
hilarious
mean,
because
nothing will ever beat the Jamal Williams like tearful like breakdown at the end
mm,
of, like, I think it was one of the earlier episodes where he's like, I get so angry seeing that record, like that fired me up. That was awesome. I was so sad when he dipped out. But
go eat
I
with the
guess,
big dogs.
Tigers will cover a bit more with Chris, but seem to be doing okay.
Mm,
I got to finally see Reese Olson's first win, W
that's
in the win
true.
column,
Yeah.
which Chris was also at, and we'll get into that with him a little bit. But I said this the other day on Twitter, not that I have like a huge Twitter following, but I'm like, I just ordered my Lindy's college football magazine. Like, I need college football now. Like, I don't
It
know why I'm in that mood. And the point was made to me the other day, like, Alex, like, we're not even in June yet. Like, we're
Yeah, we're
barely into
halfway
baseball.
there.
I could not be more excited for college football.
There's
And
actually
this is the crazy part to me, is I am, in the past, have been I've talked about it on prior episodes. I am normally a kind of an old head with college football, where like,
yep.
when the playoff came around, it pissed me off. And normally, like, all of these different things with the conferences getting new teams and all that shit, normally that would piss me off. And for whatever reason, I'm just in a happy mood, and I cannot Cannot wait. Like I was watching like I think it was like the Ole Miss LSU highlights from this last year, just like at 2 in the afternoon, just because I was like, that's all I could think about.
Yeah,
So that's,
really.
I guess, the crazy Alex update of the week, if we want to make that a segment. And then I also saw Michigan over under 9.5 wins was just released on FanDuel. What are your thoughts on that?
We'll hold off on an official prediction. I'll say
Okay.
unofficially, I'm worried about taking the over only because of how tough the schedule is with the new
Yeah.
competition in the Big Ten. That won't be an official prediction, but literally, I just heard that as you told it to me right now. I'm not saying it feels high. I think it feels like the right line, but I'd be hesitant to take the over.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, we'll get more into Michigan and Michigan State as the college football and basketball seasons start to roll around. And then I guess on the Pistons side of things, our resident Pistons expert, what's new here?
There's not a lot, just that we're hitting sort of the peak of the off season when you Pistons fans, it's so funny. And this is another off season. We've got a long list of summer discussions that we're going to have, but one of them has to be about, especially in the NBA, because the postseason is so long, you tend to be more critical of teams that got bounced in the first round or the second round, the teams that missed the playoff entirely, because you almost forget about them. So this is sort of the point in the postseason where the Pistons and all the other teams that missed the postseason get forgotten about.
Yeah.
But Detroit fans are just scheming about what we're going to do with $64 million in cap this offseason.
What are you doing though? Is my question.
Gut
GM Christian Peck-Dimit, what are you
GM
doing?
Christian is wants to. Well, if Christian is the GM, step one's already done, and Troy Weaver's out of there. I feel bad. You know, we work in sports media, so we interact with coaches and players a whole lot. So you start to understand what it's like to be on that side of it. And because of that, I feel bad calling for someone's job because it's their livelihood. But I don't think Troy Weaver is doing a good job. So
that's such a hot take. I don't know anyone that's ever thought that.
Yeah, I'm really blowing people away here. I think that we sort of stand pat a little bit. I'd love to see the money used on in-between guys. And this is maybe a little bit of a hotter take. I'd love to get a lot of B- veterans because this team sorely lacked A, shooting, B, defense, which is like half of basketball, shooting and defense. That's all the things. But a lot of what people miss is that we really didn't have a good veteran presence on this team. But
yeah,
Bogey was the closest thing we really had realistically. So I'd love to see. I think a lot of people, when they hear that, go, the rumor right now is that we go pick up fucking Tobias Harris again. I don't want that. I don't want us to throw a bunch of money at Tobias Harris, at Jonas Valanciunas, at Jeremy Grant, even though those are all realistic prospects and names that have been thrown around. I'd just love us to go get a B- guy, a guy that we can spend under $20 million a year on, and he's just a good, solid locker room guy because our timeline doesn't fit throwing a max contract at Tobias Harris. That's really all. There's not a ton of news right now. We are going to have, or we hope to have, Bryce Simon on again next week to talk some NBA basketball. Obviously, we'll talk about what at that point will be a locked up finals matchup, but we'll also talk some Pistons off season. And that's really it. The only thing left on the half dozen, we've got some wings maybe. I don't know if there's any news at this point.
Not much. I'm kind of circling the Patty Kane rumors.
Yeah,
I don't
know
know
you
what's
are. I
going
know
on
you're.
there.
I know you're worried.
I guess and I'll get more into it. I think next week. I think we'll have our interview with Chris here in a second. I think that'll take up most of my bandwidth. I think as it comes to the half dozen here, but my big question mark right now is with Shane Gostisbehere, whether or not they bring him back. He's a seasoned vet. Like they're gonna probably, he's gonna want a decent chunk of the money. I don't know. The Wings, like I've had to put them out of my mind just because I'm still like it was so frustrating that ending.
Sure.
A little bit. So I do know that the Grand Rapids Griffins did unfortunately lose in the playoffs, meaning we don't get to see much more Nate Danielson action right now. But I mean that they've made up with it by two of probably, I'd say, argue some of the most entertaining hockey series
Hmm.
in the playoffs that I've seen in a long time. So
Fair enough. That's sort of all we got for the half dozen. So we're gonna, without further ado, send it to a first-time PMS guest, Chris Castellani.
now we welcome on a very special guest coming off of a hell of a run at Barstool Sports. He is the proclaimed king of Detroit Tigers Twitter. This is Chris Castellani. Chris, how are you, man?
Yeah, I am proclaimed king, but that came from I won like a bracket that went down like 2 months ago that I totally stuffed the ballot boxes with because I'm extremely petty. So I kept telling people to go vote for it. But yes, no, it's great to be here, man. I know I ran into you at the ballpark last weekend for that very it was Saturday, right, where we ran into each other. So it wasn't
Saturday.
it
Yeah, it
wasn't
was
the crazy game, but it was a win. It was a 2-1 Tiger victory. So yeah, no, happy to do this.
Yeah, no, and but before we get started, I do have to ask who did you end up beating out in that bracket? Like, who was it? Who were you versus, if you remember?
I think the semifinals was the closest I came to losing, and that was against Jed. That was against the Tigers UK account.
Yeah.
Who's a guy that I've known for a long time. He's great. I honestly, I'd have to go back and look. It was several months ago. I'd have to remember who to check who the finals was, but that was the closest one. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we'll get right into it. First, for our listeners that don't know as much about you or don't follow the Tigers as much, I guess kind of give us a bit of a background on how you got to this point, how you became the king of Tigers Twitter. I guess starting from not only the run at Barstool, but just how you got into like the Tigers Twitter world in general.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've always been a Detroit sports fan. I've always been a Tigers fan. And I think in general, my passion probably came from the fact that I grew up, and it seems distant past now, but I grew up in a time when the Tigers were incredibly competitive and they had, great teams and they had a great GM and they had a great owner. And, you're those are formative years for you when you're growing up. So like that was a very important time for me. I loved those teams. And then, around college, I was at the time where I was at Central Michigan. I was air quotes here studying broadcasting and cinematic arts at the time. And really what was just kind of frustrating is like, I wasn't sure if I wanted to get into broadcasting, wasn't sure if I wanted to get into journalism, but I'm like, I know a lot about baseball and I know a lot about sports. So it's like, what can I do just independently to try to make sure that I can scratch that itch, so to speak? And so around 2017, it was 2017, just in my college apartment, I started doing the post game videos. At the time, obviously, with the Twitter account that I had, it was 2 minutes, 20-second videos, just talking about the game that was, that the Tigers had played that particular day. And really, it started as something that, was kind of just passed around between me and my college roommates. So I had maybe, I don't even remember, maybe 2,000 followers or something like that at the time. And it took probably about 3 months, maybe 2 months into the season before it grew to a point where I was stunned. And it's just gotten bigger since. Obviously, 4 years later, Spencer Trimble throws a no-hitter. I spent my time at Barstool. But yeah, no, that's been just the consistency of the uploads, I think, has been like a big reason for why it's grown the way that it has. And I also think, the first year I started doing this coincided with kind of the Tigers rebuild. So I do think, as much as I would prefer they be very good, I do think that the kind of conjoined frustration that everyone was feeling at the time, knowing that they were going into a new era of Tiger baseball, knowing that, they were going to see a lot of players be traded and go through this rebuild. I think it became almost like a cathartic thing for people, but it's wild that this is my 8th year doing this, and it's my favorite thing I get to do because I've got a chance to get to know people in the Tigers social media circles and even some players. It's been a blast.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I guess on that note, kind of going back to that moment where Spencer Turnbull, he throws that last pitch of the no hitter. Obviously, you're going nuts as a fan and on Twitter. Was it even a fleeting thought in your mind that game would boost your career? And I guess just in sports and journalism, however much as it has, or was that like was it even like imaginable what's happened to you the past couple
well,
years?
the idea of this one no-hitter in this video is going to lead to Barstool never crossed my mind. I knew at the time, because that was about the 5th year that I'd been doing it, I knew at the time that the content and just where I was in my personal life in that moment was better than it had been in a long time, maybe ever. So anytime there is and a no-hitter is a historic event for your baseball team, right? Whenever there is a historic event, a big win, a big loss, what have you, I knew the video would do really well. I knew that not only would the video do well, but it, as somebody who is, a guy who lives and dies by every pitch, I knew that outsiders would be interested in seeing my reaction to something really cool happening to a team where over the last 4 or 5 years, not a lot of cool stuff had really happened. So I knew that the video would be well received, and I knew that the video would do well. The idea of it, being passed around to a point of crossing Dave Portnoy's desk was not something that I had in mind at all. But I think it just, there's so many things about that time period that I'm very proud of. But I think one of the big ones was just like, I brought it up a minute ago, like the consistency of the uploads. It's like the more stuff you throw at the wall, there's going to be a lot of frustrations, but there's more stuff that's going to be likely to stick. And that was the one thing where it's like that just stuck. And it was a very humbling moment.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I guess kind of to transition into just the status of the Tigers. I guess now we're coming up on the end of May. We're not at the midseason point yet, but we've gotten to see a good chunk of what this team has been this season. If you had to give it a grade compared to your current your expectations on opening day, just on that A to F scale, what do you think you're rolling with right now?
That's a good question, and it's almost tough to answer because I think they are, as a team, just about as average as I expected. And yet, from a win-loss standpoint, they're a game under 500, and I predicted them to be 85 and 77. So, I mean, this might be a bit harsh, but I'd have to go like a C- on it just because, ultimately, there are things that I'm happy with. All right. And I think they're the things that you're happy with. The pitching, like, that's come along. All of a sudden, Matt Vierling's got hot. Like, we saw, Riley Green get hot early in the season. Kerry Carpenter's on the IL, but like, he was hitting the ball really well. Like, I see the things that you guys see, but like, unfortunately, and this is the one thing we did not expect, they're in a division right now with one team that's like 20 games over 500. And so while we can say that it's, 2.5 games out of that last wild card, sure, that is competitive baseball. The thought of them being this far back in the AL Central at this point in the season, even though we are still, not even to the halfway point, is disappointing. Maybe it's just the fan in me. Like, I do still think there's a run in there where they could still play competitive baseball and still make a run for at least a wild card spot. But for the time being, what speaks more than anything, and I'm the type of guy, and I'm sure you are too, looks at, Baseball Reference, looks at Pythagorean win-loss and wins above replacement and expected, run differential, stuff like that. At the end of the day, what plays to the average fan is wins and losses. And this is still a team that is one game under 500 after Memorial Day, which is a pretty big checkpoint in the season. So while I think for the most part, they're trending water, and there's way worse places that they could be. As an overall grade, they haven't surprised people the way that some people expected that they could surprise them. So C-.
That's fair. And I guess talking about the statistics of everything, obviously we had the great, I guess debate or speech about Spencer Torkelson either a week or a couple weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been, a hot topic when it comes to Tigers fans, in the sense that, you had that first overall pick in 2020, definitely, hasn't performed up to that standard, I think it's safe to say. But is it one of those things where Tigers fans should think back to the fact that he did finish with 30 plus home runs at the end of the season, and he still I think he has 4 home runs right now. He had 4 at the end of May last year. Is it one of those things where you can have hope for that same expectation, or is it when it's this inconsistent, it's just not going to work?
If you want to have hope that he can end up repeating the numbers that he put up last year, that's fine. Because yes, maybe history repeats itself. He did have 4 home runs at the end of May last year, came alive, solid second half. But I said at the beginning of the year and at the end of last year, where he ended up a season ago with 31 home runs, 90 RBIs, was a great step in the right direction. The peripherals also weren't incredible. That was a high slug, relatively low on base, low batting average, and an OPS of 760, right? Which for a first baseman, that's a power hitting position. That's really not great. Step in the right direction, second year after a disastrous rookie campaign. But I did say if he puts up those same numbers again, to me, that's a disappointment. I need another step forward being taken. So if he ends up repeating what he did last year and finishes with the 31 home runs, finishes with the 90 RBIs, I'll say he salvaged it. But for a college bat, 3 full years out of, into his big league career, that's considering the expectations. I think that there would be some question marks about who the first baseman of the future is. And yeah, could he end up repeating what he did? Sure. But I think that as we kind of hoped for, and what are the big things that we expected from this season was that he would kind of pick up where he left off. And even if he does end up finding his footing, the first 50 games of the season still happened. And he's been a below replacement level player. Like for a team that's a game under 500, this team they won a lot of close games, but they lost a lot of close games where if one big swing of the bat, one big home run, one big single could have, changed the ball game. And he's been given an endless number of opportunities and hasn't delivered. Like he's had a major impact on where this team's record currently stands right now. So I'm obviously rooting for him, but I think the deeper this goes, the more pressure there's going to be, especially with the guys in AAA that are kind of raking right now, whether it's Jace Young. I know these guys aren't first basemen, but like you got to kind of assemble your chessboard here, not just for this season, but what it's going to look like next year. And I think they're going to give Torkelson all the opportunities in the world. But if he's not delivering deep into the second half of this season, like the possibility of him, kind of losing his place as part of the core going forward is a legitimate thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talked a little bit about assembling that chessboard. I think it's safe to say that there's still very much in that process where you have like your big market teams that, they have their chessboard assembled and they're like, we're ready to go to fucking war. I guess going back a little ways, obviously we had the disaster of the Avila era. Is there a single, like, I guess, pinpoint moment that comes to mind when you think of the Avila era and why it was just so bad? Is there a single, is it a single trade, a single signing, or is it just like an overall aspect of how the organization was run during that time?
Do we have time? Because I can run down a long list here. No, okay, that actually is a good question. There's 2 moments that stand out to me. The 2017 trade deadline, which began with the JD Martinez trade.
Yep.
Because one thing that I was concerned about at the time was, look, JD is an amazing hitter. He's one of my favorite hitters, like in baseball ever. He's kind of in that Nelson Cruz territory to me, where it's like he's not going to make the Hall of Fame, but he's gone a decade of being the last guy that I want to face, right? Anytime he comes to the plate. And what is frustrating is we knew, hey, half a season of a guy on an expiring contract who's essentially just a 1 or 2 tool player probably is not going to get a whole lot back in return. And when I saw the return for that trade, I was stunned, right? Like I think we all were. We knew that they were immediately going to lose that deal, and they did. Now I thought at the time, and again, it's revisionist history, looking at the Verlander trade and being like, okay, we'll see what happens here. Turned out to be a disaster. I thought in 2019, their decision to retain Matt Boyd when everyone knew this guy's just an average pitcher at best, but he's also your best trade chip for a team that is going to lose 110 plus games with or without him. You might as well dump him and see what you can get for him. So those moments stand out, but ultimately the all-encompassing part of all of this that comes to mind when I think of the Avila era, yeah, free agent signings underwhelming, trades bad, like I get it, but ultimately where he failed and where they need Scott Harris to succeed is that he showed zero ability to develop young players. All those signings could have been bad, and many of them were, all those trades could have been bad. But I think you look at the Verlander trade at the time, people said, it's a pretty good deal for the Tigers. Now, nobody knew Verlander was going to have that second, third wind in his career, but people said, hey, you got a future really good pitcher in Franklin Perez. You got a future center fielder in Daz Cameron. You got a future catcher in Jake Rogers. None of those guys lived up to the hype. One of them didn't even make it past high A ball.
Yeah.
So, and if you had an organization that knew what they were doing with these guys and knew how to get the most from these players, we're not having this conversation. And that doesn't just exist for that trade. It existed for other first round picks. It's existed for Torkelson. They're trying to salvage him now, but look at the damage they did to him, throughout the first year of his major league career. So ultimately what he honed in on, which is improving the farm system, they were able to do from a prospect standpoint. But in terms of developing those guys into legitimate big league bats or legitimate big league pitchers, the only guy that they've legitimately hit on was Tarek Skubal, who was a 9th round pick. So to me, that's the ultimate failure of the Avila era.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit it kind of, you hit the hammer on the nail there where there were so many blockbuster trades at that time that I think I can name maybe 2 of them that I remember playing in a Tigers uniform, and and not only that, but those memories bring me some at least a little bit of happiness.
Yeah.
And I guess we've talked a lot about the offensive side, transitioning to the defensive side. Obviously, Tarek Skubal having a unreal year, but I do want to for a second talk about who you and I got to watch play or pitch on. I think it was Saturday or Sunday. Reese Olson. Obviously a weird year where he's got now a sub-2 ERA and just got his first win after starting 0-5 in games where he was given the decision.
Yeah.
Is that track, and again, this could be a very hot take, but is that track kind of evident of the fact that a win-loss record as a pitcher really doesn't mean jack shit?
It doesn't mean jack shit for the pitcher. What it says to me, it's a reflection of how shitty the offense around him is. Really, I never. The classic example recently was that when Jacob deGrom was at his peak and he won the Cy Young with a 10-9 record, and at one point he was 6-8. It looked like he's got some run support near the end of the season, but there was a stretch of 15 starts where he had a sub-1 ERA and he was 2-6 or something. What it says, the pitcher can only control what he can control, and especially if you are watching the games, very rarely has Reese Olson failed to make a pitch. Maybe there's been a few, a hard hit double, then a bloop single here or there, or maybe a few walks, but in general, he's executed his pitches just fine. They just haven't gotten any runs for him. So I think for people who pay close attention, you realize that it has a tendency to be luck. It has a tendency to be fugazi. I mean, him and Skubal have been, I think, since last September, every bit as good in terms of ERA. Skubal's 11-1 in that time. Now, I love Tarek, but why is it he's gotten the run support? Reese Olson hasn't. I'm not sure. But yeah, no, I think as frustrating as it is, and it is frustrating, if there's any silver lining that comes from it, at least we don't let the offense off the hook like that. That's an embarrassing thing for this team. It is that you have a guy who has been, in terms of ERA, one of the 5 best pitchers in the American League, who has really only had one bad start, who's not only just done that, but gone deep into games. It's not like he's being pulled after 5 innings and then the bullpen blows at 6 inning starts, 6 2/3. He had an 8 inning start against the Marlins. At least the offense has to wear that. And what sucks is we focus on Olson, and we should, because he's got a sub-2 ERA. But Flaherty's got 1 win, and Mize has 1 win. It's the only pitcher. And I'm glad they're doing it for Skubal because it helps his Cy Young chances. But it's not like this is an offense that just takes a vacation once every 5th day. They've done it quite a bit throughout the season. So yeah, it's a reflection that the offense around him is just poor. But I think the run support has been so historically low that it's become, I said this in one of my videos, it has become a national topic. There was an Athletic article, I think, about it being this is crazy. This guy's pitched out of his mind. And they just haven't gotten any runs for him. So yeah, that's the only silver lining, but it's the ultimate example of why one of the last statistics I look at when I'm judging a pitcher's effectiveness is win-loss.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I guess on that note, being so heavy on one side of the ball with pitching, and I guess a little bit, you could say, the defense, 2 months, you get the trade deadline. If you're Scott Harris, and as we all know, you said the other day that they're still in that building process. They're not there yet. They're not where they want to be. Are you using any of that rotation as a chip, or are you looking at the history of how this organization is done, I guess, developmentally, if that's even a word, and saying, you know what, we're going to stick with our guys and we're going to work with what we've got?
This might frustrate people, but the answer is the latter. I think they stick with what they have. And I understand, I think that there's sort of this fear, and I get it. Back in 2017, they held on to Michael Fulmer when he was having an all-star campaign. And I think the team at the time was well, by the time Michael Fulmer is, still dealing, this team will be good again. They obviously misjudged that. Fulmer had multiple injuries, and they did end up trading him, but it was when he was a reliever. I understand the frustrations that come with this team. I understand the frustrations that come with this season. And it's something I've talked about from the beginning, which is that Scott Harris's timeline, which is currently in year 2, is much different than the Tiger fans, which is in year like 8 or 9, right? Because we go back to the Avila era, which makes things obviously very frustrating. But what Scott Harris said on his opening press conference is, we are going to develop and retain good young players. If you make a move to trade a Tarek Skubal or to trade a Reese Olson, to me, you're going against that philosophy. I don't think that this team is far away enough where you need some sort of tear down and you need guys to develop to the, at the big league level that are going to take 2 or 3 years. I get it. We are all very frustrated with the offense, but the thing that will define his time here, it's not who he goes out and signs, so that will, play a factor at some point. It's whether or not he can do what Avila did and develop these guys. If next year at this time, and it's, wishful thinking. We haven't seen it here very often, but it's just, I'm viewing things from the way he's viewing things. If a year from now, Jace Young and Justin Henry Malloy and Colt Keith have all turned a corner and become legitimate major league bats, we're not entertaining the idea of them ever selling for, again, for a really long time. So I don't think they'll do that. A lot of it depends on kind of where they're at in the standings. We do still have a ways to go. My guess is there'll be a team that stands pat at the deadline. I think in general, and fans can be frustrated by it, and I understand it, I think Scott Harris right now views this organization as where they should be, like in terms of, and I don't necessarily agree with that. I still think the offense should be way better, but I don't think there's going to, I think that there's kind of this hot take theater that exists of like, they need to make a big move. I don't think that's in Scott Harris's repertoire right now.
No. You talked about, Scott Harris's maybe expectations for the team differing from Tigers fans. Do you think at all that the timeline and maybe the more willingness to stand pat has something to do with just how ridiculously good and especially surprising the Guardians, but the Royals have been as well, where you have 2 teams in this division that should have been, scrapping around 500 to have 2 teams at plus 770, run differential? How much do you think that sort of affects this timeline?
It's a very fair criticism, because you're talking about 2 teams, Royals especially, whose rebuild started like after yours did, and they are not just playing competitive baseball, but like playoff caliber baseball. They've been tremendous this season. Guardians are a weird one to me, because Cleveland does this like every other year, where I look at their roster and say, okay, they're going to be shit. And then they just, even right now, I'm like, how are they this good? Like, they got like J-Ram, I love, but their best pitcher blew his elbow out. And yet they are a team. I hope the Tigers can get to this point. They just have an identity as an organization. They develop young talent. They develop young pitching. They're a contact team, maybe not a ton of power, but they're going to move base. They're going to move runners along, and they're going to run the bases really well. And they always have a manager who manages their bullpen really well. And they always have a good back end of the pen that closes down games. So no, I do think that is where part of the frustration comes in, is why is this taking so long? And I totally understand it, and I don't mean to carry water for the guy, but from Harris's standpoint, this hasn't taken too long. From Harris's standpoint, I'm in year 2 with this. I kind of inherited a mess. I didn't know what I had. Last year was seeing what we had, and this year is seeing what we have developed. Now, if you want to make the argument that they haven't developed the way that you wanted them to, hey, I support you. I mean, we're all incredibly disappointed with Torkelson and Parker Meadows and Colt Keith, though I think ultimately he'll be fine. But yeah, I think there's kind of nothing worse than that in sports as a fan, when you see teams kind of lap you in their development, where it's like, man, like the Royals, I even coming into the year, I didn't expect much out of the Royals. They've been great. And I think offensively, when you can point to multiple guys, Jose Ramirez has been in Cleveland forever, but like a Bobby Witt Jr., who's in his 3rd year, who's a superstar, and yet you see
for him.
He's amazing, right? And you see the struggles of Torkelson, even the struggles of Green at points. There is a why. Why is it that these organizations, which, I mean, the Royals have a championship, but like they haven't been good in a long time. Why is it that these organizations are finding power bats, legit bats in the middle of their lineup that you have been struggling to find? And this goes well beyond the Harris era. It's Avila era. Dombrowski struggle with it. So I totally understand the fans' perspective of like, how is it that these teams are so much better? And I share that frustration. Like, I want to be in the thick of things. I came into this year thinking that they could be in the thick of things in the AL Central, but yeah, I think that definitely, and Harris didn't plan for that either. That definitely increases fan frustration when you see these teams that are everybody as young as you are and everybody as inexperienced as you are playing more meaningful baseball.
Sure. Got some rapid fire ones for you real quick, just, off the dome right away. We did spend some time on this earlier, but this is a little more specific. One trade that you wish never happened.
Wow. Man.
Really fitting the rapid fire in there.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I mean, it's a tough
so
one.
many.
I'm not gonna. We said rapid fire and then made it like really hard thinking.
There's so. I mean, I guess I gotta go Verlander just because he's obviously such a fan favorite, and it's not just even the return turning out to be what it is, but it's just seeing what Verlander became post Detroit. It's like you still had a guy who became a multi-time Cy Young winner after leaving Detroit. And it was him and Miggy, but like Verlander was drafted by this team. He was the guy that you always wanted to see be a Tiger. So that one I'd like to have back, especially because if you did want to trade him, there were so many pieces in the Astros farm system at that point, whether it was Kyle Tucker, Christian Javier, Yordan Alvarez, I think was there at the time, that could have became legitimate cornerstone pieces for you, and you got none of them.
First jersey you ever got.
Go for it.
Ooh. First jersey I ever got. Are we talking Tigers or just in general?
Both, actually, one of each.
Okay. First Tigers one I think was probably a Verlander one. And then first jersey in general, I think it was just a generic University of Michigan #1 jersey. Now, I think at the time, this was pre-NIL, before players, that it was meant to represent Braylon Edwards. So this was around 03, 04, but you couldn't get the names on. So it was just a basic #1 that I wore all the time. But yeah, I think that was probably it.
Yeah, I think I had it was a white Adidas with the 16 for Denard Robinson, I think was
there you
one of the first ones I had. Now this is more of an interesting one. Let's say Tigers as a franchise, they just vanish tomorrow. Are you picking another team to root for in baseball, or are you just sticking with, U of M and Detroit sports in general?
I would still watch baseball religiously, but I don't think I could. Like, I think there's something about it sounds corny, but like it's in your blood. Like, it's like saying if your family disappeared, could you choose another family? Like, I mean, theoretically,
shit.
Theoretically, yes, but it just wouldn't feel the same at all. And it's like, I think no matter what organization I jumped on, first of all, if I decided to root for a good team, everyone would just accuse me of being a front runner. If I decided to root for a team that's been terrible for a long time, then even then I wouldn't have gone through the same struggles. I wouldn't have had the same interactions. I wouldn't have gotten to know the same people. It would just kind of feel like living a lie. I still love the sport, but no, I don't think I could see myself defaulting or choosing another team where I end up rooting for them as passionately as I root for the Tigers.
I feel that one. That one.
You can only watch one movie the rest of your life. It's a sports movie. What is it?
It's probably an obvious choice, but it is Moneyball to me. Just because, it's Moneyball. There's great sports movies out there, but Moneyball to me is a just amazing movie that happens to feature my favorite sport. Like, it's so well written and well acted, and Bennett Miller's direction is so fantastic. It just happens to be about a really interesting time in baseball and a really interesting team in baseball. And it's one of those movies that I really liked it when I first saw it. Like, I think it came out in 2011, so I was like a sophomore in high school. And yet it's one of those, like, every time it's on TV movies, I got to watch at least a few minutes of it. And there's so many memorable lines. So yeah, that's the one that stands out to me.
I should have known.
Yeah, it's easy. It's probably like the most basic answer coming from somebody like me, but it is one of those, like, is this movie really that good? Then you watch it, like, yeah, it is that good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then this one is a bit interesting, and this one will probably take some thought. So right now you get to pick one guy to come to the Tigers for free. Like, you don't have to give up any prospects, don't have to give up nothing. He's going to come to the team for free. You just basically get to snag him. But you only get him on the team for a month. Who are you picking?
As frustrating as it would be to lose him for a month, I'm still going Juan Soto. And the reason I'm saying Juan Soto is because, and I've already given up hope that, like, the Tigers make a run at him in free agency, but Scott Harris's whole thing of dominate the strike zone, there is not a hitter this generation, maybe the last generation outside of Barry Bonds, who has a better understanding of the strike zone than this guy. I mean, he can be an effective player for the next 15 years just drawing walks. I mean, even if the power were to go away, which it's not going to, because he's going to hit the free agency market at 26. Even beyond that, he's just a masterful player to watch put together at bats. Like, he's one of those guys, like, if I had a young kid who was coming up, as a player, I'd be like, just watch this guy's at bats. Watch the way he approaches the game, the way he catches up to pitches, the way he identifies pitches early out of a pitcher's hand. That would be the one. And also just having a lefty bat, have some pop in that lineup with Carey on the IL would be a huge thing too. So probably, it's got to be one.
Bingo. And then to the final one to kick it off, obviously Tigers' first pitch. We're recording this on Thursday, May 30th. Tigers will play in Boston tonight, starting in 20 minutes ish. Final score of that game.
It's Flaherty going tonight, so it's going to be low scoring on both sides probably. The one thing Boston does have is, let's go 3-2 Tigers. Let's go 3-2 Tigers. They've had some pitching.
I'll take it.
I think this is the night. I genuinely think our bullpen is closer, especially the back end, is closer to what we saw in April than what we've seen in May. I think tonight might be one of those get right nights. You get 6 strong out of Flaherty, and then you get 9 outs out of Holton or Brisky or Jason Foley, and then you can call it after that. So hopefully a close victory tonight in Fenway.
Absolutely. Chris Castellani, thank you so much for hopping on. If you're listening, go throw him a Twitter follow, go throw him an Instagram follow. I would love having you on. Hopefully we get you back on before the Tiger season's over, and hopefully on a bit lighter of a note at that point, maybe with above 500.
Yeah, hopefully, man. I appreciate you guys having me.
You as well. Thank you so much to Chris Castellani, a first time and hopefully a future PMS guest. I did it again. I got to stop calling us PMS.
Yeah, we'll get there. Pure Michigan. I think we're rolling. Huge shout out to Chris.
Pure Michigan guest.
We loved having him on. It's good to get some Tigers knowledge that's far beyond mine and Christian's. As we're kind of coming up, we're end of May, close to the midpoint of the season. Again, if you aren't following him and you're interested in the Tigers, what the hell are you doing? Go throw him a Twitter follow. Go throw him an Instagram follow. He's got the post game reactions after every game, and is just at what you'd imagine your all around Tigers nut would be. Yeah. And it was awesome having him on. I guess transitioning a little bit to the current playoff pictures. You posed kind of a question in a little outline here that is kind of interesting to me. Would you rather see Jalen, Jason, or Luka get? I guess if you had to pick one, who's getting their first ring?
Yeah, I know I posed this question, but it was almost more a question for you, just because I think it's got to be Luka. I'd love to see Luka get his first ring. Not only because I dislike Jason Tatum, but also because this dude has earned it. It feels like in a league, and not to say that he's been ridiculously loyal and has stuck through 20-win seasons or something, but he's been around the block. This guy in a league where stars are very, very quick to move and to jump ship has stuck around, has watched Jalen Brunson walk away, has watched a Porzingis pairing never really fit truly together. And I get it. They were in the Western Conference Finals 2 years ago, and I don't want to call that a fluke run by any means, but no one really gave that true respect. And they missed the playoffs last year after going and getting Kyrie. Not to say, again, I don't want to give Luka too much credit that he's this like ultimate loyal Dame Lillard type guy sticking it through the hot and the cold and the good and the bad. But I think there's something to be said about winning a chip for the team that you're drafted by, and to do it with a squad that it seems has come together so well and it plays so well as a team. I think that's what I want to see. I do want to know, just from a guy that doesn't follow the NBA as closely, if there's someone in these larger trends that you just like, man, I hate Tatum, or man, I hate Luka and all this whining.
I want to go back to that. What is it about Jason Tatum that made you so quick to pick Luka?
So I was so quick to pick Luka just because I like Luka, but Tatum didn't help. Honestly, I was a big back in 2K14. My guy was drafted by the Celtics very quickly, and so I was terrible on the Celtics for a while, and that was the impetus of me being a Celtics fan for a long time. But then it was actually 2 years ago when they made a run to the finals, and they ended up losing to Golden State, and largely Tatum was. I'm not saying he was the reason for that. Curry was just on
Yeah.
a heater where he would not be denied another ring and cemented his legacy, et cetera, et cetera. But Tatum shooting the basketball like a fucking freak show was not helpful to them in that series, and that's fine. But I think I watched a lot of that run, like a lot of that run, and I think I watched every. I mean, you know me. I think I watched every Celtics game in that playoff run,
Sound
and
like
more than
Jack.
anything,
Sound like Jack Golke.
that's true. We got to have him back on. Actually, he signed with a
That's true.
management team just a couple of weeks ago, but. And we got to have Pat Cartier back on. He signed with the basketball tournament team,
Yes, I did just see
which is
that
really
today.
cool.
I think it's sick that they do stuff like that.
It
Like
really is.
it's like they have the aspect of like you're signing with something, but like correct me if I'm wrong, but it does seem like more of a casual like you're competing, but like it just kind of seems fun.
It does seem fun, and it's so much. It's just the cash at the end. And normally
Yeah.
you look at the oh, Jamal Murray got fined $100,000. That doesn't mean anything to him. Or let's make a cash incentive for the All Star game. These guys don't care about that. But the guys playing in the basketball tournament, they fucking care because that's life changing money for the casual. Not that they're casual hoopers, but the non full time NBA guys. Just to finish the thought, I think Tatum did more whining and more bitching and more left hand LeBron James style get downhill, grab a dude by the face and push him into the hardwood and then whine about it when he doesn't get a call. He did more of that in one playoff run than I've seen in a long time. And I watched a bunch of those games with my family. I can't remember what was happening that summer where I just like ended up watching a lot of playoff games as a family. We all sort of looked at each other
Lucky
after like
bastard.
every Tatum drive. We'd all just look at each other and be like, "Shit, dude, this guy's the worst." And I get that Luka. I'm being a little hypocritical because Luka does his fair share of complaining too, but there was just something about his demeanor and the way he held himself in those finals and in that whole playoff run that I just have not been a fan of him ever since.
That's fair enough. Fair enough. And I guess, transitioning a little bit to the NHL,
Oh,
I
slow
have
down! I want to hear
let's
you
slow down.
answer the
Oh
answer
wait,
to the
yeah.
question first.
You made a strong case for Luca, and I think it's something that would make Bryce Simon proud in the sense that like he's drafted by the Mavs, he stayed
Yep.
with the Mavs, he hasn't gone out and like seeked like the big three, or he hasn't gone after the money necessarily. Like, I know he hasn't been like a primo like guy, like everybody. But he kind of has that dog mentality, and like definitely has
Mm.
been the center point of this team for a long time, and I think that'd be pretty cool. I also when was the last time like one of the greatest franchises in sports history in the Celtics? When was the last time they won a title?
08.
I would have no problem that it for whatever reason that's one team. Like if the Cowboys won the Super Bowl tomorrow, I would just be miserable. And I normally don't give
Yeah,
a rat's
yeah.
ass about the Cowboys, but like it's one of those things where they were the franchise, the team for so long. For whatever
Mhm.
reason, that when it comes to like the Celtics, I'd love to see a team that has just such a rich history of winning. I think it'd be pretty sick to see that happen again, especially with the roster. It kind of at least to me, it's weird. Considering as you mentioned, I not as much of the NBA guy. Like I still like my NBA prime as a fan was when Kristaps was drafted to the
Oh,
Knicks. Like
yeah, like 2016,
seeing
17.
him in a Celtics jersey is weird, but like they have like this. It's a mesh of people that I never thought I'd see play on one
Mm.
team together. I guess, and I think that would be kind of cool. I mean, who knows? We're saying this now, and all of a sudden, the Wolves could come back and be in the finals. Like we at the end of the day, we may have just completely screwed the Mavs over by assuming that. But who
You
the hell
just
knows?
wait till my pick of the week. You just wait.
Oh no! Oh no.
We will let you get over to the ice hockey rink here real quick. I said that real weird. But Edmonton tied up the series last night, and I know that wasn't your pick. But how do you feel about that series and the damn exciting way that it hopefully is going to finish out, but it has gone so far?
I think both of these series, if they continue on this pace, I mean, I think it's safe to say they'll both go to 7 games. Both are at,
Mm,
I think, 4 right now.
yep.
I don't think I have like a clear cut runner. I honestly like, in as much of a Rangers guy as I am so far in that playoff in the Eastern side, the Panthers have been unreal. And I think it's just very, 4 very competitive teams, and it's got me excited. I think there's a little less from Zibanejad for the Rangers as I thought.
Mm,
I mean, he's got all the shots, but and that was where my head was originally. And then I was thinking, well, he's also got the turnovers and yada yada yada. There hasn't been much production there. Um, but I think it's guys, at the lower end of the roster for the Rangers that have been pulling through. Um, and then on the west side, that's up in the air for me. We've seen games where it looks like it's Edmonton, 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 and then Dallas just comes up, and you're like, holy shit, where did this come from?
yeah.
Um,
3
so
goals in
I don't
3
know.
minutes.
3 goals in 3 minutes, which was just the biggest collapse in the world. And then the Stars were up 2-0 yesterday, and then had like 4 or 5. I think it was a 4-0 final. They had 4 unanswered goals.
I think so.
So who knows? It's building up for a lot of very entertaining hockey. We're not as far in that process as we are in the NBA with the finals on the brink.
Mhm.
But
'Cause
no,
those
I think
series
both
went
of
so
these are going to
fast.
go to 7 games,
Yeah.
which would be
All right.
fun. So
It's
yeah,
like Alex said, we're through 4 right now. Tied at 2 in the East, 2-2, I should say. Tied at 2-2 at the East, tied 2-2 in the West. More than likely, this will come out tomorrow, so on Friday. And as we sit here Thursday night, neither game has started. Either Florida, New York, or Edmonton, Dallas, game 5. When you're watching this, when this comes out, one team in both series will be up 3-2. I don't want to put you on the spot, but who is it?
so I've been riding the Rangers for a while. I do think they get it
Mm,
done at home tonight. I do like a Chris Kreider goal tonight as well. I feel like we haven't seen too much of him this series. And then I think the Oilers take 1 tomorrow, and then the Stars clean up 6 and 7.
okay.
Would be my thought, my feeling as of now. Obviously, there's not much there with it being the kind of the wind down here, but I want to get to what was the weirdest article I think I've ever read. That I honestly was sitting in my kitchen today. Did he like fucking Photoshop this? Is he
Yeah.
messing with me? Like, what is going on? So, please take it away with our on this day in Michigan history,
Yeah.
on this day in
So
Michigan sports history, rather.
shout out again to Buddy Morehouse, who
We love you.
suggested this. We love you, buddy. Thank you for recommending this. But this is on this day in sports, Michigan sports history, and on this day, not last year, not the year before, but 145 years ago, the University of Michigan played its first ever collegiate football game, May 30th, 1879.
And
U of M
I
squad
know what
beat.
our listeners are thinking. No, that is not the crazy part about this at
No,
all.
that's not even close. The UM squad beat Racine College 1-0 in a game they played in the White Stockings Park in fucking Chicago for some reason.
Still not the
Uh,
crazy part.
yeah, this is my goodness. So they played in front of 500 people, which is already wild. It birthed obviously football in its natural form that you see now, but at the time it was a little bit different. And the first way to tell how different it was the first ever Michigan football touchdown was scored by Irvin Kane Pond, newly formed varsity team. He scores the first touchdown, and this is a quote from Mr. Pond. To avoid being tackled, I was forced to mount the bleachers and run eastward along them until
How
I
is this
was
real?
opposite the goal when I stopped suddenly and, fearing that a touchdown in the bleachers would not count, jumped over the head of my pursuers to the ground. What
you
the
see that? You
fuck?
see that with like elementary school kids? Like I can imagine like tee, I'm gonna go out of bounds even though there's no out of bounds, and that's how I'm gonna score. Like
Oh.
to think of how far we've gone from 500 people watching the game to 100,000. We can actually throw the football now, and we aren't running
Oh,
through bleachers.
that's I'm not saying it gets better. I think that was the best part. But the trouble, it seems, for Racine, Michigan won, by the way. I think I said that, but just to confirm, the trouble, it seems, based on the Chicago Tribune's reporting, was passing. This game ended in the favor of Michigan. Blah blah blah. Our
1-0.
boys
1-0.
1-0. Our boys, that's Racine, showed sadly deficient in playing together. That is, they did not understand how to pass the ball from one to another.
We've
What?
come so far.
Did they even know what game they were playing? Oh my goodness.
What did guys? We're gonna go play cricket, but not cricket. We're gonna play
But not
football. I don't
we're
know
gonna play
that.
rugby, but not
I
rugby.
Can
There's
we
one
can
other
we
great
include the
quote.
link to that article in
Oh yeah.
the description just to prove that we're not crazy and we're not making
We're
shit
not
up?
making this up. I have
Like
one
this
other great quote that I want you to hear. Well,
another
two
one?
things. I have one quote and one thing. One thing was the fact that they already hated the refs by this point in the game. The
Oh,
point after try, after Michigan scored, which was how you got the points. It was 1-0. The touchdown didn't score you. The point after scored you. Um, the fans did not agree with the referees calling that the kick was good. They were like, from this angle, it looks like it didn't go in. And that pissed fans off. I think that's absolutely hilarious. The second thing, and the last great quote from this story, is that it seems like a dude got knocked the fuck out and they just kept
what?
playing. No bones were broken, but Torbert was stretched out on the field. A bucket of water, however, revived him, i.e., he was
No.
knocked out cold, and they poured water
This is
on
not
him.
real. This is not real at all.
Don't worry. Torbert recovered and was plucky as ever for the rest of the
Plucky.
contest.
When was the last time you heard the word plucky used?
In 1879.
Holy shit.
I'm so glad we got to share this.
Here's the problem. Here's the problem with we've now hit the problem with this segment. Is we just hit the peak with that segment. There
That's
will
the
never
greatest story
be
ever. Yeah.
a better if you're listening and you know of a better story that like happens to be, even if it's like this month,
Share it with us.
throw it in the comments.
Mhm.
Tell us we're morons and that we're like
This happens
if
all
we
the
think this is
time.
like if you're like, oh, you think that's crazy, I have one better, like let us know, because I am all ears. I do not think it gets crazier than that.
That is lovely that we just got this segment. Just a beautiful thing. And yeah, Alex is absolutely right. We'd love to share some more Michigan history with our viewers, with our listeners, Michigan sports history, that is. So if you got anything, let us know. We're now to the final segment of the show, which is picks of the week. Alex, I know that last week's pick didn't go so well. We
Yeah.
are officially 0-1 as Mr. Deimel
You
on
know,
his
you know
pick.
what, you know what the worst part about that is I made the money line pick. I said Dodgers money
Yeah.
line.
Yep.
Then I got cocky and I said, you know what? I'm so confident in this that I'm gonna go Dodgers spread, which was -1.5, obviously the run
Ooh.
line.
Yeah.
And they lost 3-1. And if
Tough.
that isn't like a testament to my ability to like get a pick right or do something, and you've known this for years now, like that, I don't know what is. That is the perfect testament for my. This is why I don't bet on my teams, because
Fair.
I am a
Fair.
walking, talking train wreck / curse when it comes to athletics. I am purely
And on
convinced,
that
and that's
note,
you know
what's
what.
pick number 2?
Pick number 2 is going to be. I want to say it's Friday, so if you're
Yep.
listening to this, the game starts at 7 o'clock. So if you're listening to this, get on the bets early or fade me, because I suck. Phillies -1.5 tomorrow with Aaron Nola on the bump. He got the win earlier on in the season against the Cardinals. I'm taking him to do it again. All time, he's 7-3 with a 2.54 ERA and 79 strikeouts in 12 appearances against the Cardinals. He's known to dice them up pretty well. He's on a 2-game win streak. He's gotten the decision win in 2 of his last 3 games. I'm going with Phillies -1.5. And yes, I know I am 0-1. So take it, fade it, do whatever the hell you want to do.
I got one for you real quick. My pick last week, by the way, did hit, so I'm the best or something. And we're gonna stick with Luka because I'm currently undefeated. Betting on
rub
Luka.
it in a little more.
So that's exactly what I'm doing. So we're gonna stick with Luka. Last time we bet his overs on points paired with a alternate over for his assists. His assist line right now is sitting at 8.5. That feels low to me. He did go. He did go under that line of 8.5 twice in the last 4 games. However, I think if I don't want to put a conditional on this, but I will. If Derek Lively plays over 8.5, hammer that line.
Little
Still
asterisk.
take it if he doesn't play. I'm just going to lock it in over 8.5. But I will say, if you're trying to tail, be a little more weary if Lively doesn't play. That's my pick. And because that game is tonight, I want to throw you a bone if you're watching this later. I'm going to put my money where my mouth is, the Mavs to beat the Celtics.
Wow.
Plus 225 is what it's at right now. That will be a much worse. You'll get
Just
much worse
series
odds.
outright? No,
Series
no
outright.
specific.
Series outright.
Okay.
Chip winners.
Interesting.
Mavs.
Wow.
Though I will throw out there that my original pick was Denver, which went up in
flames.
spectacular flames. Yeah, so we're gonna take that with a grain of salt. But I've got Dallas, baby.
And again, we've got to think of something to for the champion and the loser at the end of the year for our picks, because the way it's going right now, I don't even know why I said that, because I'd be the loser and I'd have to do something.
It's been 1
so
week.
plenty of time. But yeah, is there what else you got? Anything I'm missing?
You know what? I would just because I just picked a winner. This does not have to be your pick. This does not have to be your anything.
Gamble responsibly.
Gamble responsibly.
If you have a problem, call the gambling hotline.
1-800-GAMBLER. And that's it. Thank you so much for joining us again for a Pure Michigan Sports episode, either 10 or 2. For the time being, and until next week, it's been Christian Peck-Dimit. It's been Alex Deimel.